Recently, OG YouTuber Cassey aka Blogilates, lit up the internet by calling out Shein, a $100 billion fast fashion company, for stealing her design and then reselling it on their massively popular website. And this is far from the first time that Shein's gotten into hot water for this kind of behavior. Over and over again, they've been put on blast for outright theft. And yet, there they are, still going strong, still uncanceled and with a beefy bottom line to boot. How is that possible? What is really going on here? Is Shein's behavior here actually legal? And if it is, what can any of us do to stop it? Hello internet, welcome to Style Theory, the show that always shows up for a trend fashionably late. But enough about my time management skills, let's talk about the dumpster fire that is Shein, the world's largest fashion retailer as of 2022. A brand that is now valued at $100 billion. Not bad considering that this thing was founded just 15 years ago. Why then am I calling it a dumpster fire? Listen, I try not to hate on people or brands without due cause, and with Shein, oh boy, does Shein have itself a CVS receipt-sized list of questionable practices. From smaller grievances like badly made items and low-quality fabrics, to claims of the huge negative impact of their manufacturing practices on the environment, to accusations of violating the human and labor rights of their employees in order to meet their grueling production demands. It is some truly awful stuff that many channels and news outlets have covered much more thoroughly than I plan to do today. The reason I'm talking about Shein today is because of my friend, Cassey. She recently put up a post calling out the brand for ripping off her designs. If you don't know Cassey, she's an exercise and activewear guru who built up not just her own YouTube channel and fitness line with Blogilates, but then successfully launched another brand focused on activewear and accessories called Popflex. Suffice it to say, Cassey knows her stuff when it comes to design, which is why when this knockoff of her Popflex pirouette skirt popped up on Shein, she took to the internet to call him out and spill some piping hot tea. I'll link to Cassey's blog post in the description so you can get the full rundown, but here are the main takeaways that we need to talk about for our episode today. Cassey first announced her design on August 15th, 2022 to enormous fanfare. The thing sold out almost immediately and was released in another wave on January 5th, 2023. On January 28th, a mere 23 days later, Shein put their version up for sale on the site. The first thing that Cassey calls out is the copying of the design. A ballet-inspired mesh skirt overlaid with workout shorts with a built-in side pocket, topped off with a tie at the high-rise waist. Check, and check. But that's not all. She then brings up a second equally interesting point here, the photos. From using a model that looks like Cassey to recreating the style of the official Popflex photos, Shein was not exactly being subtle in their recreations of not just the product itself, but also the marketing materials around it. As I mentioned before, Cassey's not the first person to be copied by Shein, not by a long shot. In July of 2021, the designer behind the brand, Alexia, tweeted this side-by-side comparison of their handmade sweater versus the item that was being sold by Shein. Just a month earlier, designer Mariama Diallo of Sincerely RIA posted about their dress popping up. And again, when the designer of Transformations by Tracy on Etsy posted,
"It's a knockoff of my silk lace cami to the T. It's exactly the same."
And heck, over on Instagram, designer Bailey Prado has basically been a one-stop shop for designs to rip off. As the post states, quote, "At Shein Official copied my whole life. There are over 20 of my designs that were directly copied. Having Shein rip off your stuff is apparently a rite of passage in the fashion world. Congrats, you've made it. Now too bad we're ripping off your livelihood." Obviously, this is going way beyond just being inspired by other people's work. This is a case of Shein blatantly ripping off other designers. I mean, you can see it, right? From the actual outfits down to the aesthetics of the marketing. So how is it that Shein keeps getting away with it without facing a torrent of lawsuits that would bankrupt the company? And more than that, can you actually copyright fashion? That's the mystery that I, fashion detective Matpat, am here to solve today. Folks, it's time for a full frontal foray into the fascinating and ferociously fraught world of fashion fraud. First off, let's be clear about one thing. There are lots of different kinds of illegal copying that can happen when it comes to clothing. And as such, there are lots of different routes you can pursue when it comes to potential protection. For instance, there are those companies that have designs that are covered by patents. This is extremely common for it to happen with certain kinds of performance athletic wear. For example, if Nike suddenly comes up with some kind of amazingly innovative shoe that makes the runner able to reach sonic levels of speed, they're going to consider that a new invention and apply for a patent to protect it. Patents largely break down into one of two categories: utility and design. Utility patents generally cover new inventions, like a faster shoe, a purse with a stronger, more durable strap, or other things that affect how useful an item is. Design patents, on the other hand, cover things on the basis of appearance, but it's notoriously difficult to get these sorts of things for clothing items specifically, since they have to prove that they're completely unique from any other existing design in the history of ever. They can also not be seen as an improvement over something that existed previously. Even major brands like Gucci tend to only hold patents for their accessories, mainly watches here in the US, while needing to go over to Europe to patent their bags. In fact, according to Christiane Schumann Campbell, writing for the Legal Intelligencer, quote, apparel designs are generally deemed unpatentable. So does this then mean it's open season for any company looking to rip off someone else's fashion design? Not quite. You see, while apparel fashion designs are hard to protect with patents, they can be considered artistic expressions that can be protected by copyright, the same way we protect other forms of creative expression in books, movies, music, and online video. But that then opens up a whole suite of questions. What constitutes original artistic expression? Is the shape of a simple t-shirt something that can be copyrighted? Probably not, but then what about the pattern of the colors on that t-shirt, or the design that's printed on the front? At what point does something become an original work in the field of clothing? And then from there, what about being inspired by other people's work? Like with any other creative field, fashion design involves a lot of gray area, with people taking inspiration from other designs to incorporate into their own looks, whether it's something as simple as using the same color, or going as far as to imitate, or yes, even copy certain elements and inserting them into other pieces. An oversized sleeve, an interesting neckline, a dropped hem, a little bit of color blocking.
In 2002, Oscar de la Renta did a collection of cerulean gowns, and then cerulean quickly showed up in the collections of 8 different designers.
It's a well-known thing that by putting your design out into the world, people can, and if it's good, will take inspiration from it. That's just how it goes. But in the world of fashion, where does taking creative inspiration end and copyright violation begin? Speaking of legal actions, I might be making the enemy of some big companies with this episode, so please hit that subscribe button so they see that we theorists are many and not to be trifled with. Did you click it? Great, thank you. I was worried for a second there that I was gonna have to take on Shein all by myself. Now that that's settled, let's get back to copyright, shall we? The simplest example of illegal copyright in fashion is anything that involves a logo or printed graphic. If I make a pair of shoes with a Nike swoosh on it, or a shirt with Mickey Mouse sitting pretty in the center of my chest, it's pretty clear that I'm not just taking creative inspiration from these brands. What I'm doing is more like selling a counterfeit or bootlegged version of the product. That is pretty darn cut and dry copyright violation. However, copyright only covers things that are considered artistic expression. And according to the US Copyright Office's official website, clothing is not artistic. It falls under a different category that's known as useful articles. Quote, a useful article is an object having an intrinsic utilitarian function. Examples are clothing, furniture, machinery, dinnerware, and lighting fixtures. Copyright does not protect the mechanical or utilitarian aspects of such works of craftsmanship. So things like shape, material, texture, thickness, stretch, breathability, basically anything that affects how a garment feels or helps it serve its purpose are all considered to be parts of function and not artistic expression. This is why a skirt like Cassey's is hard to copyright, while something like Lady Gaga's iconic dress made of raw meat is easy. One is made to serve a function, the other was used to make an artistic statement. And when you look at what Cassey's calling out in her post, they also used a mesh fabric material as the tutu-like overskirt, that they had an outside pocket on the leg, that they had the same ties on the high-rise waistband. These are all things that fall under that umbrella of useful articles. And by now, you might be starting to see the real problem here with this case. Clothing exists in this nebulous space where it's not useful enough to be counted as an invention worthy of a patent, but it's also not creative enough to be copyrightable. Basically, if you're in the business of copying other people's work, fashion design exists in the perfect sweet spot for you, at least legally speaking, which makes it a big ol' sour spot for anyone who's trying to avoid having their hard work ripped off. As Julie Zerbo of the Fashion Law blog put it, quote, makes for a pretty messy and not straightforward reality. The reality is, in most cases, it's perfectly legal to knock off a dress design. According to her, many companies have mastered the art of copying just enough to make their knockoff design look like the thing it's designed to imitate without copying any of the elements that would be legally protected. This is probably why a lot of countries have laws that lay out more specific legal protections for fashion design specifically, and why a number of fashion designers here in the US have lobbied Congress to meet the legal standards that exist in countries like France, Italy, and the UK. For example, the European Union has the Designs Protection Directive, which protects, quote, the appearance, of the whole or a part of a product resulting from the features of the lines, contours, colors, shapes, texture, or its ornamentation. This kind of wider spreading copyright law is what let Yves Saint Laurent sue Ralph Lauren over a vaguely similar dress back in 1994 for counterfeiting and disloyal competition. Look at these two dresses you see on screen right now. Do you think it was copying? I mean, you can kind of see the similarities, but it wasn't that close. So, what's your guess then? Do you think the lawsuit was upheld in court? Well, unbelievably, it was. Yves Saint Laurent won the case, and it's nowhere near the exact dupe that we're talking about with Cassey and Shein here. So, is that then Cassey's answer here? Leave LA and move to a European country that takes legal protections for their fashion designs more seriously? Yes, kinda is the solution. At least, if we were only talking about the clothes. But we're not just talking about the clothes. If you were paying attention at the beginning of the episode, you'll remember that it wasn't just the clothes all of the designers, including Cassey, were accusing Shein of copying. It was also the marketing. And while fashion designs may be almost impossible to cover through copyright, protecting images is a whole different ballgame. Let's look at the evidence again. On the left, we have Cassey's original images from her Popflex website, and on the right, we have the images that Shein used to market their version. As Cassey herself notes, the details just line up. Both are demonstrating the pocket using specifically an iPhone, both in a similar pose and with similar cropping. Both show a similar looking model doing a similar pose, and both models are wearing similar styles of athletic tops. The backgrounds, the lighting, the visual composition of the images, all of it glaringly similar. As Cassey notes here on the blog, the point here is to specifically make people think about her original when they see Shein's images. Quote, they chose an Asian model so that once one of their ads pop up, people will subliminally associate the Shein skort with me modeling the pirouette skort in my viral video. And boom, add to cart. It really does seem to be what Shein's going for here. Again, let's go back to the many examples highlighted by designers like Bailey Prado and Mariama Diallo to see the lengths that they're going to in order to make the ad for the knockoff look more like the real thing. Each and every time Shein's replicating everything from the background, to the pose, to the skin tone, to the body type of the on-camera talent. It's almost like they're trying to trick you into thinking that the Shein ad you're looking at is an ad for the same thing that you saw in a viral Instagram post last week, not a hastily made knockoff that's intentionally marketed to look like the real deal. Anyway, current copyright law requires you to show that the infringing images demonstrate substantial similarity, and my totally amateur, definitely not actual legal advice opinion, these two images seem to be substantially similar, as do these, and these, and these. What's more, the courts look at whether the two images are so similar that the only possible explanation could be the person who made the second image, being Shein's version, had access to the first image and was intentionally trying to replicate certain elements. And that definitely seems to be the case here. This then evolves from a mere case of copyright infringement. It becomes a case where the Federal Trade Commission could get involved. Yeah, the same FTC that wants to make sure that every influencer is disclosing when they're hashtag sponsored also cares a lot about ads that are intentionally designed to mislead the consumer. And Shein knows this, which is why when the internet decides to rally together in support of these smaller designers and bring attention to what Shein's doing, Shein pulls the designs from the website as if they never happened. And they're not just pulling those designs down for legal reasons either. They're doing it for the PR. The rise of Shein has been mostly thanks to Gen Z. See, their target demographic is women under 25. And while these Gen Z shoppers are definitely budget conscious and thus drawn to Shein's low prices, Gen Z shoppers tend to be ethically conscious as well. They're consumers who care about how their products were made. Are they sustainable? Are they authentic? Well, those right there are two tests that Shein fails hard. Don't think that I forgot about the giant OSHA elephant in the room that I mentioned at the top of the episode. A recent undercover documentary by UK Channel 4 reported that the workers who spend all day cranking out Shein products in China really do spend all day cranking out Shein products, working 16-hour workdays and only 1 day off per month, all for a paycheck of around $572 a month. Now, China's already famous for having some grueling work hours, but according to CEICdata.com, the average Chinese worker clocks in at about 9.58 hours a day and earns about $1,393 a month. That is an alarming difference from the numbers that are coming out of Shein's factories. Maybe I should do a whole episode about how bad Shein is. Let me know down in the comments if that's an episode of Style Theory that you'd like to see done in the future. For now, we need to focus on how to help the designers that are at the center of this issue. In short, fashion designers need the support of better laws. Laws made to keep their work safe without the hoops and price tags that only big brands can navigate. And I hope it happens soon, because for too long, Shein's gotten away with stealing from other designers, taking the work that they've put hours and hours of time into and turning it into a cheaper imitation. And while Shein might not have to worry about designers going after them in court, this time they might have have bitten off more than they could chew. When you go after a creator with over 8 million subscribers and 2.3 million Instagram followers, people start to notice. They start to spread the word about your underhanded business practices. And I am more than happy to raise that alarm and help spread that word. Shein 100% deserves to be called out for their actions. On social media, in the courtroom, in your day-to-day life with people around you who are buying from this website. This isn't just their one-time whoopsie. They have been doing this intentionally and repeatedly for years. But who knows? Maybe this time is the time that they flew too close to the sun. Speaking of big companies engaging in questionable practices, now's the time to hop on over to our brand new film theory where I tell you exactly how Disney aims to keep Mickey Mouse from ever falling into the public domain. It is a big-brained move that probably cost a ton in lawyer fees. Anyway, go watch that one right now. If YouTube's not stroking out, it should be right there in the recommended feed. And my friends, as always, remember, it's all just a theory. A style theory. Keep looking sharp.